Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Peches, Daf 88 of Masechta Yoma. Chevra, today's exciting Daf. You know why? Because it's the last Daf of Masechta Yoma. Pretty cool, right? Right. So the Daf begins discussing Ne'ilah, and if you pray Ne'ilah, well, hopefully you're praying Ne'ilah, but do you also have to pray Mariv? Interesting shaila over there. And then the Gemara and the Masechta concludes with some exciting sugyas about Balkari. So let's get started. Alrighty. So we're going to get started on Daf Pezayin and Beis. 2, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Yeah. That sounds good to me. Yeah. Amar Rab, says Rab, Tfilas Ne'ilah Poteris Shel Arbis. Boom. Chavi, you hear that? That if you daven Ne'ilah, well, as I said a minute ago, hopefully you're davening Ne'ilah. Ne'ilah is exciting, right? It's the culmination of Yom Kippur. I mean, it's intense, but Yom Kippur is an intense day. So, when you daven Ne'ilah, so then you don't have to daven Ma'ariv. Rav l'tayim midam etzlei yiseri. Now, this is consistent with Rav's opinion that we learned about yesterday, that Ne'ilah is its own separate davening, right? Own Shmona Esrei. And once you daven Ne'ilah, which is happening at night, so memele, you don't need to daven Ma'ariv. Okay, we're going to see it's taka machlokas about if Ne'ilah is davka at night or during the day. Okay. Okay, and therefore once already you daven Ne'ilah, which is its own proper tefillah with the Shmona Esrei, so if you're assuming that you're davening Ne'ilah at night, so then memele you already davened at night, i.e. Ne'ilah, so you don't have to daven Ma'ariv. One second. Does this make sense to say that Rav would be saying Bichlal that if you daven Ne'ilah, then you don't have to daven Ma'ariv anymore? But doesn't Rav say that you never really have to daven Ma'ariv anyways? Because Tfilas Arbis for Shus going back 1,000,000 years ago to the beginning of Masechta Brachos, that Tfilas Arbis for Shus, that you don't actually have to daven Ma'ariv. It's optional. So why would Rav be saying that if you daven Ne'ilah, you no longer have to daven Ma'ariv? Mainly you don't have to daven Ma'ariv. It's Rishus, it's optional. So the Divrei Omer Chova Ka'amar. So the Gemara says, yeah, what Rav is saying is that according to the opinion who says that Ma'ariv is taka obligatory, even according to that opinion, if you daven Ne'ilah, you don't have to daven Ma'ariv because you already daven Ne'ilah. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Or Yom Kippurim, on the night of Yom Kippur, Mispal Sheva Misvada, okay? So you daven 7 brachas on Yom Kippur night, and you do Vidui, Shachris Sheva Misvada, Musaf Sheva Misvada, B'Ne'ilah, Mispal Sheva Misvada, Arvis, Mispal Sheva Me'ein Shmone Esrei. Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, Mishum Avosav, Mispal Shmona Esrei Shleimis Mipnei Shetzarech Loma Abdallah B'chonin Adas. No? What's the shaila? Who can tell me what the shaila is? The shaila is that we have over here a brisa that's saying that you taka daven Ne'ilah and you daven Ma'ariv, right? What does it say? It says B'Ne'ilah Mispal Sheva Misvada, right? The brisa says that at Ne'ilah you daven a Shmona Esrei, and then at Ma'ariv, Mispal Sheva Me'ein Shmona Esrei. So Tanakama says that, and then at Ma'ariv, you daven Ma'ariv, but you don't have to daven all 18 brachas because, it's post Yom Kippur, you're tired, whatever it is. So daven Me'ein Shmona Esrei, also like we learned about in brachas, that Havinenu, that you merge all the middle brachas into one, fine. And Chanina ben Gamliel says in the name of his fathers, Mispal Shmona Esrei Shleimus, no, you taka have to daven all 18 brachas, a proper Shmona Esrei, because you want to say Atachon Antanun, Chon Adas, Beseder, he says say all 18. But what do we see? We see a brisa that's saying that even though you daven Ne'ilah as a separate Shmona Esrei, right? It says Ne'ilah Mispal Sheva Misvada, just like Rav, that it's a separate Shmona Esrei, and yet it's still talking about davening Ma'ariv. So on the one hand, Rav is saying that if you daven Ne'ilah, you don't have to daven Ma'ariv. Yeah, we have a brisa that's saying that even though you daven Ne'ilah, you're still going to daven Ma'ariv. So, and for the Gemara, Tanoihi. So the Ma'is, it's Machlokas Tanoim. The Tanyas, we learn in the Brisa Kochai Tvilis, Tovin Kedarkim Yom Kippurim, that anybody who has to go to the mikveh, so you go to the mikveh on Yom Kippur. Nida, Violedes, Tovlos Kedarkim B'leil Yom Kippurim, a woman who's a Nida, or a woman who gave birth, and now what? So when does she go to the mikveh? She goes to the mikveh, I believe after like the 40 days or the 80 days, if I'm not mistaken. I think. Unless is it after the week or two? I can't remember. I don't know. I'm going to assume it's after the 40 days or 80 days. Maybe I'm not correct about that though. So I just looked it up quickly, and Lemaisa, it sounds like actually Yoledes would, we're talking about going to the mikveh, I think, Kilu 7 days after she becomes Tameh, which should, I guess, be, this is the way I'm understanding it now. I could be making a mistake, but Kilu, the way that it works with a Yoledes is that after a woman gives birth, so then for the first, depending if it's 7 days or 14 days, depending if it's a boy or a girl. For a boy, it's 7 days. For a girl, it's 14 days. If she sees any dam during that week or two, so then it would be Dmei Tuma, right? It would be like the equivalent of Dmei Nida. Now, for the rest of the time, a duration of 40 days for a boy or 80 days for a girl, any dam is Dmei Tahara, it's Tahor blood. So if I understand what it's saying correctly, so basically, if during the first week or two she sees any dam, so then she becomes Tameh, which means that then Mida Oraisa, she would have to then wait 7 Dmei Tahara, 7 days without seeing any dam, and then she goes to the mikvah. It is that going to the mikvah, I think, that we're talking about when it comes to a Yoledes, if I'm not mistaken. So anyways, but we're saying that a Nida or Yoledes who has to go to the mikvah, so then they go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur night. Okay. Balkari Tovel V'holech Ad Amincha. Now a Balkari, a fellow who saw sperm, so then he can go to the mikvah until mincha. Okay? Meaning, if he saw Keri, so then, right, as we learned about also Masechta Brachos, that Ezra made a takana that somebody who is a Balkari, he goes to the mikveh in order to learn Torah or to daven. And therefore, we want this fellow to be able to daven in Yom Kippur. So we say, well, if he becomes a Balkari, so go to the mikveh so that you could daven. So we say, until mincha, we say, okay, go to the mikveh. However, once you've davened mincha already, if you become a Balkari, why should you go to the mikveh? Meaning, it's Yom Kippur. We don't do rechitza. We don't go into water. The only reason why you would go to the mikveh is if you're a Balkari so that you could daven. But after mincha already, there's no need to daven. So what's the implication? The implication is that Ne'ilah is happening at night. And therefore, if this fellow becomes a Balkari after mincha, there's no need for him to go to the mikveh anymore to daven because he's not davening the rest of the day. Ne'ilah is happening at night. And therefore, wait till the nighttime to go to the mikveh before Ne'ilah. So we see that according to the Tanakama, Ne'ilah is happening at night. And therefore, Memele, if Ne'ilah is happening at night, so then you don't have to daven Ma'ariv as well. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kol Yom Kulo. Whereas Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that that a Balkari can go to the mikveh the entire day. Because Rabbi Yossi holds that Ne'ilah would be during the day, right? It would be before nightfall on Yom Kippur. And therefore, since, even after Mincha, if he becomes a Balkari, he could still go to the mikveh because he's going to have to daven Ne'ilah still during the day. So he can go to the mikveh. So we see according to Rabbi Yossi, Ne'ilah happens during the day. And since it happens during the day, so Memele it wouldn't cover Ma'ariv, right? Because Ma'ariv is at night. So you'd still have to daven Ma'ariv. So Rav, who says that if you daven Ne'ilah, you don't have to daven Ma'ariv, is like the Tana Kama, who says that Ne'ilah is dafka at night. Rabbi Yossi would say it's in the afternoon, which is why if you become a Balkari, even after Mincha, you can still, a Balkari can go to the mikveh since he still has to daven Ne'ilah. Now we have a kasha. Hazav ve'azava. That a zav, a fellow who sees ziva, v'azava, a woman who sees ziva, v'amitzora, v'amitzoras, Kilu, there is zav and a zava, meaning that the whole thing, that they have to not see any ziva for 7 days, and then they go to the mikvah, potentially bring a korban. Hamitzor v'amitzoras, a fellow who is a mitzora or a woman who's a mitzoras. Uval nida, a fellow who sleeps with a nida and he becomes tameh to the same degree pretty much that she is. Utmei meis, as well as a fellow who becomes tameh from a corpse. Tovlin kedarkim b'Yom Kippurim, they go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur. Okay, meaning if the seventh day, if the day they have to go to the mikvah is Yom Kippur, so they go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur. Nida v'yoledes, again, a nida and yoledes, tovlos kedarkim b'leil Yom Kippurim. They can go to the mikvah on the night of Yom Kippur. Balkari tov v'olech kol Yom kulo. Now, interestingly, over here the Tanna Kama is saying that the Balkari can go to the mikvah the entire day. Interesting, because the first brayso that said that Balkari can only go to the mikveh until mincha, but not after mincha. Rabbi Yossi omer min mincha l'mayla ein yachol litbol. Now Rabbi Yossi seems to be saying that after mincha he doesn't go to the mikveh, which is very interesting, right? Because we had just said a minute ago that according to Rabbi Yossi he can go to the mikveh all day. Yet now Rabbi Yossi is saying that after mincha the Balkari does not go to the mikveh. So what's going on? Lo kasha de tzali tfilas ne'ilah had lo tzali. So the Gemara says, meh, not such a big deal. When Rabbi Yossi says in the first brayso that he can go to the mikvah all day, it's because he didn't yet daven ne'ilah. And therefore, since he didn't yet daven ne'ilah, so he can go to the mikvah. However, in the second brayso, it's talking about we're already daven ne'ilah. And because he already daven ne'ilah, so even Rabbi Yossi would say he can't go to the mikvah anymore, because why should he go to the mikvah? It's Yom Kippur. We don't just go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur. And he already davened ne'ilah. He's not going to be davening anything else. So then why should he go to the mikvah? Now, Idit Tzali, my time I do Rabbanim. But then the Gemara says, but if the second brayso is talking about where he already davened ne'ilah, well then why would the Chachamim say that he is allowed to go to the mikvah all day? He already davened ne'ilah. What's the point? Why should he be allowed to go to the mikvah? Because Savi Rabbanim tefillah b'zman a mitzvah. Aha! Because the rabbis hold that it's a mitzvah to go to the mikvah at its proper time. And therefore, even though he already davened ne'ilah, we want him to, if he's a Balkari, he should go to the mikveh as soon as possible, even if it's Yom Kippur. Michlad Rabbi Yossi saw a mitzvah, but 1 second, does that imply that according to Rabbi Yossi, going to the mikveh as soon as possible is not a thing? And that's why Rabbi Yossi says that, look, if you already daven ne'ilah, so then there's no reason to go to the mikveh if he's a Balkari. What about tefillah b'zman mitzvah? Yistama, then Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold of tefillah b'zman mitzvah. But V'atani, 1 second, this is a brayso. I think it's a brayso that we've seen him twice already. Masechta Shabbos, and I think also Masechta Pesachim, maybe. If you have a fellow that had the name of God written on his flesh, he shouldn't bathe, he shouldn't put on oils, shouldn't stand in some place, like an inappropriate place where you wouldn't be able to, that isn't befitting of the name of God. If he has to go to what does he do if he has to go to the mikveh, right? He's got, I guess it sounds like he's got the name of God written on his arm, let's say, in ink. And if you go to the mikveh, then the ink can get washed off. So what do? So find some kind of reed or something that you can cover up the name of God with, and then go to and then dunk. And like that, I guess it would prevent, hopefully, the name of God from being erased. Rabbi Yossi says, no, don't worry about wrapping up the name of God with some kind of a reed. Rather, just go to the mikveh. Don't worry about erasing the name of God. Just don't rub that, the name of God, don't like remove it, but you go to the mikveh regularly. And we say, how come Rabbi Yossi, what's the machlokas between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi? How come the Tanna Kama says, find some kind of a reed and cover up the name of God, and Rabbi Yossi says, no, just go to the mikveh regularly? The answer is because Rabbi Yossi is concerned about tefillah b'zmana mitzvah, right? That we want you to go to the mikveh at its proper time as soon as possible. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi is concerned that if you're going to go looking for a reed and you don't find the reed, so you might end up not going to the mikveh b'chlal and pushing it off. And Rabbi Yossi doesn't want that. He wants you to go to the mikveh as soon as possible. So he says, just go to the mikveh, don't worry about the reed. The Chacham say, no, tefillah b'zmana mitzvah is not as much of a thing, and therefore better to find the reed so that you don't risk erasing the name of God. And if that means that you end up doing it the next day, beseder, it's not such a big deal. But Rabbi Yossi is makbid that tefillah b'zman mitzvah, that you want to go to the mikveh as soon as possible. So we see from this brisa that Rabbi Yossi's opinion is dafka tvila b'zmana mitzvah. So how come Rabbi Yossi would say legabe Yom Kippur that if ready daven ne'ilah, he wouldn't go to the mikvah anymore for the rest of the day? What about tvila b'zmana mitzvah? So answer the Gemara, ahi Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that when it comes to Yom Kippur, when we say that if you're ready daven ne'ilah, he does not go to the mikvah anymore, that's not Rabbi Yossi, ahi Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. That's Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya is we learn in the Brisa Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Dai l'tefillah shtei b'achrona. It's a very complicated Gemara from Masechta Nida. I'm not going to go into the Gemara. A, because it's complicated, and we don't need to go into all the complicated stuff. B, because I don't remember it so well, because it's very, very complicated. It was a Gemara Nida that I learned a long time ago. I was talking Chutz La'aretz at the time. I think I learned it on the day that, Lemaise, I may have learned that Gemara on the day that I went into the city to B&H to buy whatever the stuff I need for the recording for Babylon Talmud. I went to B&H. I told the Hasidim Darton that I wanted to start a podcast for the Daf HaYomi, and they were telling me different ha'aras. First they were like, you're going to teach Daf HaYomi? I was like, yeah, I guess. So then I went to the place where I got the mic and the stand and stuff, and he said, okay, so you're going to give the shir, and you're going to be standing like this, and it was very sweet. So it's a very complicated Gemara over there that's talking about all sorts of different calculations. That you have a woman who is pregnant and then no longer pregnant, but she doesn't remember, like when she gave birth or something, whatever it is. There's all different types of configurations about when she has to go to the mikveh. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, look, she just let her go to the mikveh once at the end. So we see that Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is not concerned about tefillah b'zman mitzvah. Kilu, all the different calculations, and just go to the mikveh now, go to the mikveh then, whatever it is, it's because we want to make sure that she goes to the mikveh on time. According to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, he doesn't really care about going to the mikveh on time as much. He says just, instead of the whole headache of all these calculations of going to the mikveh, Rashi says there's different, like she can end up going to the mikveh 95 times. So Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says just wait to the lowest common denominator, go to the mikveh at the end. So we see that according to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, he's not so concerned with tefillah b'zmana mitzvah, and that's why he would be the one who says that if you're already daven ne'ilah, so then there's no reason to be going to the mikveh anymore on Yom Kippur, because we don't say tefillah b'zmana mitzvah. Fine. Tani Rabbanan, the Rabbi Star Keri Yoma Kippurim Yored V'Tovel. So a fellow who sees Keri on Yom Kippur, so go to the mikveh. Ule'er V'Shavshev. And then after Yom Kippur, he should clean off his body, to make sure that there's no chatzitza for going to the mikveh. Now, Le'erev, Ma'idahava Hava. The Gemara says that doesn't make any sense. Meaning, if we're saying that you have to clean off your body and make sure that there's no chatzitzas before going to the mikveh, so then why would you do that after Yom Kippur? Right? Yeah, that's the kind of thing you'd have to do before you go to the mikveh, not after you go to the mikveh. So no, rather say from the evening, from Erev Yom Kippur, you should already do that. Meaning, on Erev Yom Kippur, you should already clean off your body and make sure there's no chatzitzas, just in case you become a Baal Keri, so you can go to the mikveh and don't have to worry about chatzitzas. Alright, sounds good to me. Tani Tana Kamadu of Nachman, a certain teacher of Brises taught before of Nachman, a fellow who sees Keri on Yom Kippur, that sounds very beautiful. A fellow sees Keri on Yom Kippur, so all of his sins will be forgiven. Alright? V'atane, we learn in a Brisa avonos of Sdurin lo. But we have a Brisa that says, no, taka the opposite. Fellow sees Keri on Yom Kippur, all of his sins are lined up for him. Ki'ilu, bad news. I feel like, what? Nightmare City. Nightmare City. My students doing limachel. No, what does it mean organized in front of him? It means organized to be forgiven. Givaldik. Tanit Rabbi Shmuel was telling the Besmedrash of Rabbi Shmuel, Keri b'Yom Kippurim, a fellow sees Keri on Yom Kippur, Yida kol Hashana kula. He should be worried about the entire year. Bad news. Nightmare City. V'im also lo Shana. However, if he manages to somehow survive this crazy year, Muftach lo shu ben olam haba. Well, guess what? You're going straight to heaven. If you manage to survive a year in which you saw Keri on Yom Kippur, dude, you must be one special yid. Amr of Nachman bar Yitzchak Teda says of Nachman bar Yitzchak, you should know shekol olam kula roiv u'saveh. The entire world is hungry and famished and afflicted, and he's good. He's good enough that he can see Kerry. When Rav Dimi came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, he said, no, the opposite. From Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said he's going to have a long life, very, very geschmack. So, all right. So, I mean, do what you want with that. Hadron Olach Yom Kippur Muslikala Mesechta Yoma. Gewaldig. Chever. We did it. Mesechta Yoma. What do you guys think? Pretty geschmack, right? I learned about the Beis HaMikdash, Kohen Gadol. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? A lot of interesting Gemaras, interesting Agaritas. Stuff at the end about Tshuva. I don't know. Yeah, I learned about, a whole appreciation of the Beis HaMikdash and where everything is in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Avodah of Yom Kippur. Givaldig. I mean, Yom Kippur is coming up soon, right? When's Yom Kippur? In a few months. Yeah, it's geschmack. Chever, so Daf Peches, we talked about the machlokas about if you daven Ne'ilah, do you have to also daven Ma'ariv? Basically, it was related also to the fact of when do you daven Ne'ilah. I think we generally do Ne'ilah in the afternoon when it's still light outside. I think we even try to do duchening before Shkia, Mikilu in the Chazar Sashat. But we said that if you daven Ne'ilah at night, so then you wouldn't have to daven Ma'ariv. But if you daven Ne'ilah during the day, so then you would have to daven Ma'ariv. We said that a Baal Keri, who sees Keri on Yom Kippur, so we saw that it is we kind of saw a few different opinions. We saw the opinion of the rabbis who say that, look, you daven Ne'ilah at night, and therefore if a fellow sees Keri after Mincha, so there's no reason to go to the mikveh, because they would say that Tefillah B'zmana is not a mitzvah, and you're not going to be davening Ne'ilah during the day, so wait till after Yom Kippur, then go to the mikveh, and then daven Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the first brisa, or really in the second one as well, and we said it's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, is that if you see Keri before Ne'ilah in the afternoon, because he says that you daven Ne'ilah while it's still day at time, so if you see Keri before Ne'ilah, so go to the mikveh, so you can daven Ne'ilah. After Ne'ilah, if you see Keri, don't go to the mikveh, because Tefillah B'zmana is not a mitzvah, and there's no reason to go to the mikveh then until, the nighttime, because you already daven Ne'ilah. Then there is the opinion of the Chachamim in the second brisa, which is that, no, even if you already daven Ne'ilah, you would still go to the mikveh, because Tefillah B'zmana mitzvah. We see that the Chachamim in the second brisa say that you daven Ne'ilah during the day as well. Fine. And then at the end, we saw this interesting discussion about seeing Keri on Yom Kippur. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The mice we say at the end, it's not a good thing, but if you end up surviving the year, it means you're a very special person. Cheved, that was Daf Peches of Masechta Yoma. It was also the entire Masechta Yoma, so which is pretty geschmack. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow for Masechta Sukkah. Sukkah shigavoy l'malim me'esim ama psuler b'yuda machshir. We're going to start off with that. I'll see you. Cheers.